ICO data analyst at ICO Alert, the trusted ICO discovery platform. Visit ICOalert.com, the most comprehensive calendar of all active and upcoming ICOs to discover the latest projects and opportunities like EOS.io. And I'm here today with the founder of ICO Alert and CEO of Cypherglass, Rob Finch.
Thank you all so much for joining us for another episode of Everything EOS. We've made it in 8 episodes now, which means a little bit more than 8 weeks ago we started talking about all this, educating everybody on EOS. We sincerely appreciate the feedback and comments that we get about the show, and we hope you continue to share your thoughts. If you enjoyed the show, let us know by liking, subscribing, or following the podcast on YouTube, iTunes, or SoundCloud.
On today's podcast, we're going to be detailing the latest news and announcements around EOS.io, including the mainnet launch happening very soon, some recent FUD, some bug bounty news, and Rob's big bullish bet on the EOS token price that has everyone buzzing in all of the Telegram channels.
Now, before we get started, I do have to mention that this podcast is not sponsored. We're just 2 excited token holders, members of the EOS community who do hold EOS tokens ourselves. This is not to be construed as legal, financial, tax, professional, or any other kind of advice. Just 2 people that are passionate about this open source technology.
All right, a big week for EOS, a big day today. The snapshot and token freeze is coming up in a couple of hours now.
Yep.
How about that? The big news this week, at least around here at ICO Alert's Rob's big bullish bet on EOS that he made public recently. Rob, why don't you tell the story for people who don't know about it, and I'll back it up because I was there for the bet originally occurring months ago.
Yeah, so it's the $1 million EOS bet, and you can learn more about it if you just search $1 million EOS bet on YouTube. But Q, one of the people who works here at ICO Alert, and I have been talking about EOS back and forth. You know, I'm always super bullish. He tries to kind of play devil's advocate and like say, oh, but what about this? What about that? So long story short, we made a bet, and the bet goes like this. If EOS passes $1,000 USD per token by the end of this year, Q owes me $1 million payable in EOS. If not, I owe Q whatever 1,000 EOS times the price is. So if it hits $500, I owe Q $500,000.
This bet happened months ago. I think it was during Rob's original bullish phase whenever we went on that first run up to $18 and then maybe came back to around 14.
Yeah.
And I think that's around the time whenever the bet was made. And I'll be honest, I think it's a ridiculous bet. I am more bullish than most on EOS. And I don't know if 1,000's attainable even in the future, but if it is, the timeline's not in alignment, in my opinion. I think it could happen in maybe a couple of years, and that's going to be dependent on the entire market cap of all cryptocurrencies increasing.
We'll see.
But in case someone listening doesn't want to watch the video, why don't you give the TLDR on your reasoning behind being so bullish on this valuation?
Yeah, there are 2 main reasons. One is what I call the airdrop feedback loop. So airdrops are really becoming a new method of funding, meaning you can go out and airdrop tokens, but keep some for yourself, and actually in the process end up raising a bunch of money when the market values that token. So EOS Stack did this. They raised about $45 million. But the feedback loop part of this is that when a developer like EOS Stack comes out and airdrops and raises a bunch of money, all of these other developers who are looking at them, maybe they were going to run ICOs, maybe they were going to go and try and get VC funding, suddenly this airdrop model is very appealing. And then they're going to airdrop to EOS token holders, which means you get another token for every EOS token you have. Then developer C sees that developer A and B are doing really well and got a bunch of users from airdropping and got a bunch of money from it, and they start airdropping. So it's kind of this feedback loop where developers see the success of other developers and continue to airdrop. And what that's going to result in my opinion, is more than 1,000 airdrops this year and probably thousands more next year, where the market is kind of valuing these tokens at different prices depending on what they think they're worth. And then the other point is float. So one of the unique components of the EOS network is that you have to stake tokens to vote for block producers, but you also have to stake tokens as a dApp developer to run your dApp. It basically gives you a fixed amount of bandwidth on the dApp forever. So it's an ownership model versus rental model. So what that basically means is that over time, I think a huge percentage of the float, maybe even 90%, could be locked up, which means the actual supply that's available to even sell on exchanges could be 10% of what it is now.
Yeah, so I agree with all of that. It's all going to lock up tokens, decrease float, increase token price. It's just the numbers, man. And I think that's you've become like the ultimate Twitter troll, and I don't even know if you did it on purpose or not. But you're like that guy that just comes into the channel to either spread FUD or spread like FOMO.
Yeah.
You just come in but you got everyone bullish, and I like that.
Yeah.
Everyone's super bullish because whether it hits $1,000 or $100, everyone's going to be happy.
Yeah, I think it's hard to see $1,000 EOS from this perspective. Like when it's $11 or $12, it's like we're 1.2% of the way there. How is this ever going to happen? But I think as we get kind of this waterfall moment into EOS after launch, I think it's going to slowly become more and more attainable for a lot of people. When we pass 100 and 200 and 300, they're going to go, oh, wait a minute, maybe this $1,000 bet will actually happen. But the only way to find out is to wait.
You've got mail.
Oh, I just got a random message here from Q, actually. It says, tell Rob I can't wait to take his money. Yeah,
that's good.
So Q's loving this because, I mean, in all honesty, he's got a really good chance of winning this bet. But he really hopes that the token price hits $900, $950.
Yeah, that's how he gets the max.
He's the one that's going to be making the millions or almost $1 million.
You know, and somebody pointed out to me because I was mentioning, Ethereum went from less than $10 to more than $1,000. Obviously, it has 10% of the flow to EOS last year, but they corrected me and said, no, actually, Ethereum didn't pass 1,000 until January 4th. So it was 4 days too late. It passed 1,000. So maybe that'll happen with EOS.
All right, so that's your stuff. There's bigger fish to fry here with the mainnet launch. There was a blog post that kind of walks through the phases of how this rollout's going to happen. You're definitely more familiar with it than I, if you want to kind of give everyone an idea of what to expect over the next couple of days.
Yeah, so all the different block producers, ourselves included at Cypherglass, have sort of teamed up to create what's called the EOS Mainnet Launch Group, or the EMLG. And the EOS Mainnet Launch Group is the one that are basically coming together and saying, hey, we're going to launch one EOS mainnet. We don't want a bunch of different regional forks, like one in Asia, one in the rest of the world. We want to make one EOS. It's better for everybody. Everybody's incentivized to get along. So how this process is going to work is that shortly after the token freeze, which happens later today, which is Friday, June 1st, after that token freeze happens, you won't be able to move your ERC20 tokens anymore. So make sure you have them registered or put them on an exchange that will register them for you. After that freeze happens, we'll go through what's called a BIOS boot up process. It's sort of like starting up your computer for the first time. They're going to launch the chain, distribute all the tokens based on that token free snapshot, and then pause the chain. And the reason why they pause the chain is to go through a 48-hour validation period where we're all going to go in and check, basically make sure that Genesis snapshot of everybody's tokens were imported correctly, make sure there are no critical bugs. And then at the end of that 48-hour period, the chain will actually go live. And once 15% of people come in and basically vote for a block producer, the chain will unlock and we'll be good to go.
So at what point are people going to be able to take their new wallet keys that they generated through the EOS.io website, map them to their Ethereum keys? When are they going to be able to use those keys to vote before the tokens become transferable? And where do they go to vote?
So it's either going to be right before or right after the validation period. It seems to me, at least my understanding of it right now, is you'll be able to do it during that validation period. So what you would need to do is download the, I believe it's a Chrome extension, Scatter. It's basically the MetaMask equivalent for EOS. MetaMask is a wallet that lets you interact with Ethereum accounts. You'll import your private key into Scatter, and then you'll go to one of the many voting portals. One of the community ones is eosportal.io, and you'll be able to vote for your different block producers there. So that 15% unlock rule that I'm talking about basically requires 150 million of the 1 billion tokens to be voted towards a block producer in order for the chain to unlock and let everybody send their tokens.
Yeah, so that's how I understood it, is after midnight tonight, Universal Standard Time, all tokens are frozen. You can no longer transfer them out of whatever wallet they're currently sitting in. If they're in an exchange, they're handling it. I know Binance already locked their withdrawals and deposits. Bitfinex is doing it soon. Kraken's doing it soon. Today, actually, probably by the time this airs, they're locked. So nothing's transferable. And then the main net is going to launch, but even after it launches, tokens are still frozen and locked, but they're locked in their new EOS wallets, which were just generated when you registered your keys.
Right.
So they don't become transferable until a consensus of 15% of the holders can be reached.
Correct.
So that's pretty likely to happen, though, because I don't know how many tokens all of the big players hold. Is Block One abstaining from voting on this, or?
Block One has only said that they reserve their right to vote. I would be I would highly doubt that they will vote in this initial unlock period because they kind of want to let the community come to consensus and launch the chain. But they have said that they reserve the right to vote with their 10% in the future.
Okay, and just for those listening, Block One, they're the company who built the software and are currently going to be developing it for a long time, and they own a 10% stake of all the tokens. It's 100 million tokens that they have. They own. I believe they're under a 10-year vesting period.
Yeah, so it's a 10-year vesting period with a 1-year cliff, which means they get 1% of those 10% every year for 10 years.
So even if they wanted to vote this weekend, they could potentially only vote with 100 or 10 million tokens.
No, that's the interesting catch is that I believe their entire 100 million can be voted. They just can't be transferred out of their wallet and sold.
Okay.
Until those cliffs are hit.
Okay. What about like for bandwidth and capacity and stuff? So if they launch their own dApps, like
I think
we keep speculating they're going to do a social network or something.
Yeah. I believe that they can use those to stake for bandwidth also. So it's kind of a way to let them use the full 10% without being able to transfer it or sell it to anybody.
But early on in the network, there shouldn't be capacity issues. With very few tokens, you could stake them and run any dApp you want. Most likely,
yeah, because there aren't going to be a ton of dApps at launch. I did see a really cool infographic recently about, 24 or so that are planning on launching sometime in June, which would be pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And that I think will be the first real test of the network to see how it handles those few dozen dApps.
But I guess getting back to my original point is 15% of tokens, even without Block One's tokens, I think that's doable. Just between the whales alone and
I agree.
The Korean exchanges and all these major exchanges that made their announcements, that they have been pretty transparent saying they're absolutely not going to vote with other people's tokens, but that they own a lot of tokens themselves. I mean, they collect a fee every time a trade is made. Just from those fees alone, they own a ton of EOS. Interestingly enough, this morning I saw that Bitfinex did an AMA on Reddit.
Yeah.
It was pretty interesting. They're clarifying a lot of things. They're going to have a voting tool on Bitfinex that should be ready within 7 days. So it might not be ready for the mainnet, like the pre-launch, that phase we were just talking about. But after everything's going, within about 7 days, they estimate they're going to have some sort of voting protocol built in that you'll be able to vote with your tokens while holding them on the exchange.
That's fantastic.
Cool. They also added some clarifications about what they plan to do with EOS Finex, and it was interesting that they said there's not going to be any registrations. Then someone chimed in and said, does that mean that U.S. citizens are allowed to use it? And they gave an iffy answer, but the fact that they're not doing registrations, they could say you can't do something, but they left it pretty open.
Well, and that's the beauty of decentralized exchanges is that there's really no way to stop people from registering because it's decentralized.
Just reading through it, some other important stuff. They are going to honor any legitimate chain. Their main focus is the main net that everyone is going to agree upon being the main net. So talk about that, because there's some sort of agreement among the block producers that they're not going to maybe not get voted in and be like, screw you guys, I'm going home.
Exactly.
And starting their own.
So it's about 100 different block producers, ourselves included, that have come together and said, hey, we want to launch one mainnet. We're all incentivized to launch one mainnet. We want all the dApps on the same mainnet. We just want this to be EOS. We don't want to have EOS and EOS Cash, for example. So we've all come together and signed this agreement. And the, I guess, most promising part of this agreement is that for the longest time, I had been speculating that we would probably see an Asia-specific EOS fork, that all the Asian block producers would get together and just kind of launch their fork because there's a ton of EOS over there. It's happened with other chains before. But fortunately, they've all signed on as well. So it really is truly this global commitment to launch and support one chain, whether or not, as a block producer, we get voted in.
So Block One's been putting out a lot of warning statements lately, and this is another warning for those listening, is there's going to be forks of other chains launched, but some of them are going to be fraudulent.
Yeah. So
you made this wallet pair, and to do anything with your tokens on it, either the main chain or these fork chains, your same private key is going to work for all of them. So what you could potentially see is a fork launch an EOS chain, and they're going to call themselves the mainnet, and they're going to probably be tweeting like crazy and trying to message you on Telegram and telling you that this is the official network, because what they want you to do is they want you to input your private keys. And if they have your private keys on their crap fork that's going to last 2 days, they could take those private keys on the real mainnet and take all your tokens.
And that's the main thing is before you import your private keys anywhere, you're going to want to check as many sources as possible to make sure that you're importing into the real mainnet, into the real Scatter app. So my advice to everybody is just to wait. If you're unsure, just wait. Your tokens are still going to be there. You're going to wait to unlock them. But follow a bunch of different block producers on Twitter. You can follow us at CipherGlassBP, follow EOS New York, follow all these other guys who are going to be the ones coming out and saying, hey, here's the mainnet, and all the block producers should be tweeting, yes, this is the mainnet.
And in all honesty, unless you're in a hurry to start moving tokens, you're able to verify that your tokens were mapped correctly through various tools. So you know that you did it correctly. As long as you registered correctly, just wait it out. Honestly, give it a couple days until I hear Dan Larimer herself telling me like which one's the mainnet.
And that's an interesting point. I don't think that Dan,
they can't. Yeah.
I don't think that Dan or Block One will ever say this is the mainnet, but they will do it in another way, which is their dApps that they're funding through all these VC partnerships will just happen to launch on the same main chain.
That brings me up to something interesting. So far, publicly announced, there's only been one funded dApp through the EOS VC program. And the EOS VC program is basically a program developed by Block One where they're distributing $1 billion in funds to various VC funds, and then they're allowing the VC funds to handle how they want to distribute that to dApp developers. And it's kind of like an ICO model, but different because they're being funded through Block One's money, which they gave to the VCs, which is going to these development teams to build whatever they want to build, or for other things too. It could go towards building incubators, accelerators, educational programs. But Galaxy Digital was the first fund announced, right? They were the first one? I think so. That was the big Korea news, right?
I think it was Tomorrow BC came out before Galaxy Digital.
Anyway, either way, it's one of the first ones. I think it was for $325 million. And they've officially announced their funding of $30 million to Everpedia, which we've talked about many times here, made by a group of developers. And is Larry Sanger in charge, or what's his role?
Larry Sanger, I believe, came on as some kind of advisor or team member, but he is the co-founder of Wikipedia. He wrote the Wikipedia, some kind of document for it, but he was one of the main people who started and founded Wikipedia and sees all of the problems that it has now and is trying to solve those issues with Everpedia, which is basically a decentralized, community-run Wikipedia.
So what was interesting is I was kind of just trolling around on the internet, and there's a website called Crunchbase, and typically it's used to kind of monitor different venture funds and where different money's going. So I was on the Galaxy Digital page, and there's only 3 transactions recorded on this page. The funds received, which was $325 million from Block One. That's how Galaxy Digital was formed on here. It shows the $30 million given to a company called Everpedia in a Series A funding on February 8th, 2018. But there was something else listed on there that no one's discussed, and I think this is probably the first time a lot of people are going to hear about this, and you could verify it on Crunchbase yourself. But there's an organization called Botchain that was funded $5 million by Galaxy Digital, which was funded by Block One. So I think we might have our second official EOS Block One Galaxy Digital funded dApp. So I took this information I found, and I wanted to figure out who Botchain was, and I actually found out that they did a private ICO round, and we've actually done some partnership with them. I think we did an ICO report for them here at ICO Alert. So I was reading around their CEO. His name's Rob May. He's written a lot of blog posts, and a couple months ago he said something about how the Ethereum network might not be scalable enough. So he said he'd be open to moving to either Tezos or EOS, and he called them out specifically.
Wow!
So I took some screenshots of this stuff, and I went to their Telegram group and I called them out. I was like, "Are you guys moving to EOS?"
Yeah,
and they didn't deny it. But they didn't confirm it either.
Yeah.
So I got in touch with Rob May, their CEO, and I'm actually going to be interviewing him next Wednesday morning. And depending on his answers, we're either going to play some of the interview on next week's Everything EOS, or if it doesn't, if this is just fake news, I'm not sure, but I think it's going to be legit. I'm hoping he'll make the official announcement on the podcast.
Yeah,
that'd be
that's
really
awesome.
Cool. But I'm going to talk to him next week, and whether he's officially ready to announce announced he's moving to EOS or if he's just considering it. He will be discussing his relationship with Galaxy Digital and how that all panned out.
Nice.
So I'm really curious to hear that, because you would think Galaxy Digital would have some way of like kind of pushing them towards EOS.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, especially since Galaxy Digital themselves, I guess, has a number of different funds, but the EOS.io ecosystem fund is what it looked like had given them $5 million. So
yeah, and Botchain, just to they're in a bot AI type company, and they're doing identity verification and certification for those bots. So if you think about it, every person in the world has one identity, and there's a lot of different companies trying to solve digital identity on blockchain. Civic's one of them. There's a bunch of them, but they're all trying to solve that problem. But now there's a problem with all these bots. Like if there's going to be bots like handling medical records or private information, you want to make sure that you're not giving it to a fake bot. Like if let's just say Google had a group of bots that did some sort of work, I want to know that it's actually a Google-owned bot and not just some random one. So the concept kind of makes sense to me. I'm definitely not qualified to dig into it much deeper, but we'll go over that more next week. There's way bigger.
Well, and props to you for sleuthing around and finding that, because the screenshots you were sending me were like, oh wow, this actually might be the next investment that they come out with. Maybe they'll do an airdrop. We'll see.
I don't see any other way around this, especially when they didn't deny it when I called them out on it. And they said that they're still wanting to use Ethereum. They're expecting it to scale properly, but
and especially when other people like BToken, for example, who got confused with this tweet that Brendan Bloomer, the CEO of Block One, sent out about BToken announcement coming to EOS or something like that, and it was really a different company, Be Social, that I guess we'll talk about. But BToken immediately denied it. They were like, "No, that's not us."
Yeah, and
you got it wrong.
Bloomer, he deleted that tweet, right?
Yeah,
because it caused enough controversy.
It was just so funny. I don't know if it was a coincidence, but Brock Pierce that morning had tweeted out something about bees going extinct, and then like 6 hours later, Brendan Bloomer tweeted this thing about BToken, and everybody was like, "Oh, what's going on?" And it turned out to be nothing.
I thought it had maybe something to do with wax, because beeswax.
Oh, interesting.
Token. And it still might be, but my theory is that so there's a hackathon coming up. Is that next week or is it the week after?
Oh wow, that's next week.
Yeah. So the global hackathon
starting next Friday.
There's going to be
Saturday.
4 different hackathons over the course of the rest of this year, and the first one for the EOS hackathons next week in, is it Korea?
Hong Kong.
And there's actually 5 finalists selected to be part of it, and one of them is called Be Social, BEE Social. So whenever Bloomer is talking about B tokens, I think he could have potentially been just talking about Be Social, because they're like a volunteer, like social good blockchain type thing. And I mean, the Block One team is all about that. Brock's not with him anymore, but I'd say Brock was the biggest advocate of that kind of stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
So
I'm so excited for the hackathon. It's something I forgot about, and I think a lot of community members probably forgot about also. Like the first hackathon is coming right here next week in June, and then shortly thereafter, I think it's a month and a half later, they have another one, a month and a half later, another one, leading up to the main event later this year.
I mean, we've seen hackathons for years on Ethereum. Every year they have the Waterloo one, and like we've seen projects come out of that are pretty well-known projects at this point.
It's just so exciting because like we are right now in the final period of the EOS token distribution of their major ICO. And I remember at period 1 going, wow, I wonder what it's going to be like at period 350 with all the stuff that we've learned, all the different announcements. And we're finally here. And now to know that we're a week away from seeing real projects getting built on this in a weekend and a hackathon it's so exciting. I'm so excited for launch, just to see what happens after and to see all the cool dApps that are going to be built on this platform.
Yeah, Bancor was actually built out of a hackathon competition.
And now is doing the entire, or is I guess the backbone for the RAM trading model on EOS. So
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's crazy to see how that happens.
I mean, hackathons are really, really cool outside of blockchain too. Any type of development, you get so much done in a weekend. It's just like 48 straight hours of just code and putting really smart people together with great mentors and advisors, and you get a lot of stuff done really quickly.
And that's a good point to mention. If you're interested in these hackathons, maybe you've been in crypto for a while, maybe you haven't. It's not just for coders. A lot of these teams also need, I think this was something you were telling me.
Yeah, like business analysts, like marketing people.
Designers. They need everybody who would be involved in building some kind of dApp to participate in these. So if you're interested in participating, check them out. It's eoshackathon.io is the website, the official Block One hackathon website.
Let's see. There's some FUD. There's probably going to be constant FUD. I'm expecting FUD like crazy over the next at least couple weeks.
100%. It's so crazy to see all the like major Bitcoin maximalists, if you can call them that, coming out and just hating on EOS. Nick Szabo, I forget the other guy's name, but a bunch of them are coming out and basically saying all this horrible shit about EOS.
CNBC put out an article yesterday that kind of called it vaporware. They're like, this company raised $4 billion and has nothing to show, but they're launching this weekend.
Yeah, and
it's like, well, then they have something to show.
And the figures are wrong anyway. I believe now it's well over $5 billion. So they're trying to be an authority in the space, saying, look at these people who haven't raised anything, but can't even get the correct number. So,
and I think I've heard a lot of people mention, I've even thought it myself, like, why does an ICO need billions of dollars?
You don't.
And I don't think they set out to do that either. Like, it just happened. And you got to think of it like this, though. It's not just one ICO that's funded. So far, we know of at least $1 billion being funded into these VCs who are eventually going to fund them into these dApps. And if you think of each dApp as its own little mini ICO, those billions of dollars are actually going to fund thousands of ICOs. So we talked about this yesterday, Rob. Everopedia, they were the first.
Do you hear this?
Yeah, it sounds like birds. There's like a bird attack outside.
It sounds like a bunch of people screaming.
We're right across from we're recording this in a different room than we typically do. And there's a children's museum across the street. That's probably what it is. They're probably having like a field trip in recess.
There's a guy on a bench down there very calmly eating a bag of chips. So I think we're okay. We can continue. Sorry.
So the ICO, it's like they're going to fund thousands of ICOs. Yeah. And what was interesting was when we were talking about Botchain, how I found them on that Crunchbase. And Everopedia was funded $30 million, which is a typical raise for a lot of the more well-established ICOs, more legitimate ones. Raising $30 million isn't out of the norm. But what was interesting was Botchain was only funded $5 million. And I like that model.
Oh, absolutely.
Because working even with ICOs today, I don't understand why they need so much money up front. I know Vitalik's put some ratings out about a better model for token distributions where it's done in phases. And that's more typical of how current investments work. You got your seed round, your Series A, then your Series B, and you go through these different phases of funding and the valuations go up as you prove your value.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that's the direction that they're headed here by only funding $5 million, because that's enough. That's seed money. That's enough money to find your market fit, get an MVP built,
yep.
Get the right team together and show some value. And then potentially to go along with the airdrops, that's when that could be their bigger fundraise model. Is they get this $5 million of initial funding from one of the EOS VCs. That's enough money to get their beta going, check for figure out if the community is going to support this, figure out if there's a market fit, and then maybe 6 months, a year later, they're ready to start thinking about their airdrop.
Yeah.
That way there's already kind of a value built into this token because the company kind of built value into itself already.
Well, and that's the beauty of these airdrops. There are going to be a ton of airdrops that are frankly going to be worthless because people are airdropping tokens before they have a product. Maybe the idea is horrible, but what airdrops are going to do, and this airdrop funding model specifically, I think is going to do, is reward the people who have actually put in the work and built a good product, whether it's an MVP or a full stage product that they're ready to release. The market is going to reward those people by valuing their token for more money. But there's one cool thing about airdrops that I didn't talk about in that $1 million EOS bet video that I wanted to touch on, which is that over time, so we've seen with ICOs, for example, a common percentage that a team will keep for themselves of tokens is 30%. So they'll distribute 70% in an ICO and they'll keep 30% for themselves. But there's really no incentive for those people to ever sell a significant portion of those tokens. And just follow me throughout this. With the airdrop funding model, their funding is locked up in those tokens. And what I think a cool side effect that we're going to see from that is that over time, the pool of token holders will be further decentralized when that company, in order to get their funding, has to slowly liquidate some of their own tokens. So they go from holding 20% of the tokens down to 10%, down to 5%, to whatever percent they want. But in a lot of these dApps where tokens give you some kind of voting power, like Everopedia, for example, that's a good thing for the health of the platform because it further decentralizes the ownership of all those tokens.
Yeah, I mean, with the current ICO model, you think about it, sometimes I feel like ICOs are, a lot of times I feel like ICOs are greedy.
Oh, yeah.
Because think about it like this. If I'm going to raise $10 million, I'm going to collect $10 million worth of ETH. And I'm also keeping 30% of my tokens.
Yep.
So it's like you're double dipping. Whereas with the airdrop model, you might get 5 million in USD, not even necessarily crypto or in EOS, might be. But you get that initial funding, but then all of your future funding is your own token. So like you said, you got to liquidate slowly and only cover your costs in a way.
Exactly.
So you have to rely on that value going up.
Oh, absolutely. And those people have to continue putting value into that product in order to continue to realize that value and get that value out of the tokens. It's not like an ICO where they can raise $100 million and then say, fuck this, we're out, we don't care, and the token goes to zero.
Yeah, they have to earn it.
Yeah, exactly.
And you typically see with ICOs, so a lot of them have a lockup period on their own tokens. So what motivates them to kind of maintain their community throughout this like 1 or 2 year lockup period when they can't even do anything with their tokens? So their motivations don't really hit until they could actually use their tokens. Whereas with the airdrop model, they might not be locked up because the company needs funds, but it's in their best interest to only sell what they need to run their company and build their community.
And then they benefit when they add more value because they're the biggest beneficiary, the biggest token holder, and it goes from there. It's pretty exciting.
So, and as far as airdrops, like you said, they're not all gonna. I'd say the most valuable ones are going to be the VC backed
100%
airdrops,
Absolutely.
the Everpedias of the world, and possibly the bot chains. We'll see what happens with that, but. Well, I'm giving them a lot of free promotion.
Yeah. I'm so excited to see, though, on the Everpedia note, to see how many tokens they give you per EOS. Because they've sort of teased that they may be going above the 1-to-1 ratio, where you may get 10 IQ tokens for every 1 EOS you hold, just because for their token economics, they need a greater supply to be able to reward people over and over again for submitting and curating articles. But who knows? We may, if you have 1,000 EOS, you may end up with 10,000 IQ.
Yeah, I'm curious to see, like, the initial evaluations when it hits like exchanges, because that's a really risky time to be buying or selling.
Yeah.
Because the market hasn't decided on a price yet.
Yeah.
You might look like the biggest genius or the greatest fool.
And it's going to be cool with, especially a lot of these exchanges coming out and saying, hey, we're going to support the legitimate airdrops. IQ token, I think is from Everpedia, I think is one that Bitfinex in a different AMA, somebody was pointing to me.
I think it was in this one. Definitely.
Did they explicitly?
They said definitely IQ. Binance.
See, that's so exciting.
Said something about like all the major ones, and IQ is the most major airdrop, for sure.
Well, and that's it's going to be so cool to see that price discovery happen right out the gate, to see what these things are worth and see what happens.
So I think this is another good time to warn everyone listening about scams. This next week, a couple of days, are going to be the most scammy times you're going to see, because everyone's expecting these airdrops. So I think what we're going to see is someone saying, oh, we're doing an airdrop, but we're only doing it on this chain. Sign up for this chain to get these free tokens. And you if you're not smart about it, you're going to go to that chain and you're going to give up your private key. And when you give up your private key, like I said earlier, you're giving it up for all of the different chains.
Yep.
So everyone just be really, really careful. I recommend doing nothing.
Yeah.
Just watch the official EOS Twitter.
Well, and that's an important note, is that the majority of these airdrops, really all of the good airdrops that you even want, you don't have to do anything. They require no action. They're just going to appear in your EOS wallet on the mainnet. So if you see something that says, hey, claim your tokens this way, or take this action to get whatever the thing may be, a new token, more EOS, it's probably a scam. So if you see anything about, hey, import your tokens here and double up your EOS, oh, this is block 1, we're doing a promotion, give us this to get that, just don't do it. Gall's advice is perfect. Just do nothing. Just wait to see what happens. Wait for the community to kind of validate the main chain and go from there.
The other thing is, I guess, setting everyone's expectations, because I saw this with EOS DAC. Like, as soon as the snapshot happened, it was like, everyone's like, where's my free tokens?
Yeah.
And you're not going to get them right away.
Yeah.
I think Everpedia pinned a message in their Telegram. It said expect them mid to late June.
Yeah, I think they said by June 15th. So they will go off of the Genesis snapshot. Unless something happens with that, they said they would take a new snapshot after that. But they'll likely go off the Genesis snapshot, and then you'll get your tokens by June 15th. So be patient. They'll be listed on Bitfinex. You can do whatever you want.
Doesn't matter how many warnings we send out. I can guarantee at least the EOS price channel is going to be filled with people saying, "Where's my free tokens?"
100%. People will always be asking, "Where airdrop?"
But yet they don't even understand what an airdrop is or how they usually work to know that they don't come instantly. And
one of the cool things about airdrops on EOS that we didn't mention is that on Ethereum, when EOS DAC did that massive airdrop to all these token holders, they spent some exorbitant amount of money, like $30,000 or $40,000 just in gas fees to send them all out. But on EOS, you could even just buy one token and lock it up and then slowly trickle out the airdrops for free. Mm-hmm. Or you could, if you're Everpedia and you have 100,000 EOS, you might be able to send all the airdrops instantly.
So last thing before we wrap up is the bug bounty, because that was the cause of some FUD, because there is, what was it, a Chinese company, something 360?
Some kind of Chinese company, Security 360, something like that, came out and said that they had found a critical bug in the EOS software, which I believe was true, but the bug had already been fixed 16 hours prior. I've seen the GitHub commit myself from Dan Larimer himself. It was already fixed. But as a note to everybody, you're going to see more bugs. However, it's because there is a live bug bounty. So when you see these bugs, they're being fixed before they're announced to the community. And one of the good things about EOS is that even if there is some kind of a critical bug after the validation period, after the mainnet launch, the nature of EOS is that those bugs can generally be very easily undone. It's not like Ethereum where you have to hard fork out to fix a bug. That protocol, the core EOS code, can be updated without you having to do anything.
Yeah, to expect software to be completely bug-free on day one is insane.
Yeah.
Now, you want to try to solve as many of the critical security bugs you possibly can, and that's what they're trying to do. So Block One put out an official bounty of $10,000 per qualifying bug.
Yep.
And that's at their discretion. But you got to think, they're the most talented white hat hackers in the blockchain space. They stand to gain a lot more by finding these bugs, getting notoriety for themselves for discovering them, collecting that $10,000, than they would for taking advantage of that bug. Look at the DAO hack. It completely. ETC is the original Ethereum.
Yeah.
And they're sitting at $15.
Yeah, exactly.
And the fork of Ethereum is the official Ethereum now.
Yeah.
And it's valued at over or under 500-600, wherever it is today.
Yeah.
I don't have any Ethereum anymore.
Yeah. What's Ethereum?
I keep $25 for my transaction fees.
Yeah, for gas fees. It'll be nice to once the token freeze happens to be able to liquidate that $60 in Ether and just be done with it.
Yeah, so the bug bounty is a good thing, and you don't. The general public doesn't understand that this is normal, but the fact that they're finding bugs is good.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Especially that they're finding them before launch and fixing them very, very quickly before launch. And EOS themselves, from their official Twitter, even put out a statement saying, media has incorrectly reported that there is a mainnet launch delay. We're still on track to release EOS IO 1.0.
That's what I mean, man. That Chinese security group, I think they put out an official post saying they found the bug, and that's for the notoriety. You're
exactly.
a white hat hacking group who looks for these kind of security flaws. So they were proud that they found that bug. They weren't. They weren't fudding EOS. They're we found this bug. We're good at what we do.
And so many times this all stems from a mistranslation, which was the case again this time, where they had quoted Dan in saying, "We won't launch until this is fixed," which is true, but it had already been fixed when they put their post out. But all people saw was, "We won't launch," and freaked out.
Their bloggers jumped on it, man.
Exactly.
Critical bug found in EOS. That's good because it hasn't launched yet.
Yeah, exactly.
And you think about Ethereum in, what was it, 2014? It was pretty much strapped together with duct tape. They were lucky that their mainnet even launched at that point, because it was.
Well, and I have to say, seeing, and this is a point that Adriana, our community manager at Cypherclass, made, seeing what it takes to launch and coordinate the launch of a global blockchain now, I have so much respect for anybody who has launched a blockchain in the past, even if it was a small shitcoin that launched your own blockchain. Hats off to you, because this is not an easy process. It's a very complex process, and seeing sort of the inner workings of it through Cypherclass, it's pretty crazy.
So I guess before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to add about what's going on with Cypherclass or the BP community as a whole?
Yeah, one announcement we have from Cypherclass, we just invested in F5 Silverline DDoS protection. So F5 is the main DDoS company worldwide. DDoS is basically a spam attack on your servers. Somebody's going to come in and try to shut our block producer down. But because we partner with F5 and put out a shit ton of money to partner with them, we're not going to go down. So our block producer Cypherclass, if you're looking for somebody to keep the EOS mainnet online, keep it secure, and listen to you, the token holder, vote for Cypherclass. We'll be there in the voting portals, and you can come cast your vote our way.
All right, I guess that's a good time to wrap it up. So the next time you listen to us, we'll be talking about the new mainnet launch and how great everything's going. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully I'll have some good news about another potential officially VC-funded dApp, but we'll see on that. Still speculative.
Absolutely, and I think that's a good place to wrap up. I'm Rob Finch.
And I'm Zach Gall, and this is Everything EOS.